Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to see you here this morning. And so this morning, I typically don't wear a t-shirt to preach in, but today's a special day. Today is our Serve Sunday, and we take this opportunity to serve our community in many different ways. So what is community? What does that word mean to you? Maybe it's simply a place where people live. It's a geographical area, makes up a community. Maybe it's a sense of belonging, a sense of connection with other people with a common bond and interest. Maybe a community is that of values, priorities, and beliefs. Maybe a community to you is having other people to share things with, joys and sorrows, work and play. Maybe it's having a meal together or sharing stories. Maybe a community to you is a group of individuals that you can share your struggles with, your burdens, your victories, and your defeats. A community is a group of people who matter to you and who you matter to them. So we know that community at the core is a good thing. But sometimes as individuals, sometimes we struggle at having community. Sometimes we struggle at getting in with a community of individuals. Maybe we have trouble fitting in. Sometimes we get confused on how to cultivate true community. When I say that, sometimes we're making a community something it's not. And so when we talk about community this morning, I want us to focus in on the community of united believers under Christ. That is our community that we are referring to this morning. A church, a body of believers that gather, should be a community, a group of individuals united to one another through their union with Christ. You see, that's the challenging part sometimes to a community is a community is those that are united together through the union of Christ. Unfortunately, we have individuals that we know that are simply playing Christianity. They're playing Christianity. So when we gather and we unite under this banner of Christ, we may have individuals that say, yeah, I fit under that banner. Yet their union with Christ is not there. So this morning, as we talk about community and we talk about the church, I'm calling us to focus on something this morning, and that is to focus on Christ. For a non-believer here, when I say focused on Christ, that's going to be hard. That's not going to mean the same thing to other people as to some. To focus on Christ. When we focus on Christ, we have the ability to love God and to love others. You see, the true love of a Christian is one of sacrifice and of service. When we focus on Christ, we focus on our hearts of service. So this morning I want us to look at the way that we build community by having a Christ-centered community. How we build that. How we come together as believers to build the community of who we are. And I've got three things that I kind of want to focus on this morning that's going to help us out in building community. And when we look at service, when we look at our Serve Sunday, this emphasis that we do 5 times a year, these are the emphasis that we have when we're doing our Serve Sunday. But the first point this morning on how we build a Christ-centered community sometimes you just got to roll with it, right? Hey, since you interrupted me, I am really grateful for those that sacrifice their time between the worship team and the tech team that does all the audio stuff and pushes the buttons to change the slides. Those things are very important to us on Sunday morning. And so mistakes happen, but I am grateful for you guys. So thank you. All right, back on track. So how do we build a Christ-centered community? Okay, the first thing this morning I want to say is we build community by caring for each other's burdens. We carry each other's burdens. Paul talks about this throughout his letters. Typically on a Sunday morning, we've always studied passages exegetically, right? We kind of go through a passage and we break it apart and we look at words and we look at meanings, stuff like that. Today, as we look at really building community, this is kind of, we're going to be taking a look at several passages and pulling some points and things out of each of those, okay? So this morning, we carry each other's burdens, and Paul talks about this throughout his letters. Okay, in Romans 15:1, he says, "Now we who are strong ought to bear the weaknesses of those without strength, and not just to please ourselves." Later on in Galatians, he says, "You, my brothers, were called to be free. But do not use your freedom to indulge the sinful nature. Rather, serve one another in love." The entire law is summed up in a single command: to love your neighbor as yourself. And then in 6:2, he writes to the Galatian church, he says, "Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ." So what should we do, church? Right? Here is what I think. We should take care of our own problems and expect others to do the same. No. Should we make sympathetic comments to our friends about the difficulties that other people are having? Should we just tell people that they just need to buck up? And I'm praying for you. Yet do nothing about it. No. We're to bear one another's weaknesses, not just to put up with, not just to tolerate, but to focus on each other's weaknesses by being actively engaged in using our strengths to help them. We're to serve one another in love. We're to carry each other's burdens. We're to live as those who are responsible to help others. We, as Christians, are responsible to carry the burdens of others. So who are the weak? Who are the individuals that have burdens? I'm looking at several of them across this room, okay? So we all are. We all have those burdens that we need to carry. We have burdens. I have burdens that you need to carry. I read a quote this week by Will Rogers. Some of you may know that guy. And he once said, "Everyone is ignorant, just in different subjects." We recognize that we're all different. And the things that I am strongly suited in may be your weakness, and vice versa. So what do? We know and we learn each other's gifts and talents. And so when I have an issue in an area that I am not competent in, I can call somebody. Hey, I need help in this. So what kind of burdens is Paul talking about here? Well, we read those three passages, right? He talked about physical burdens, literally carrying burdens for each other, right? Hey, Joe and Angela, I'm going to pick on you this morning because you're the most recent one that I know of that moved here, right? You moved from one area to, right? You had people come and help you physically carry your stuff, right? You guys did a lot of work in that, I know. Moving, it really stinks sometimes. Right? Sometimes our burdens are simply physically carrying something for somebody else, right? If you guys were doing it on your own, you would still be moving, right? from 3 weeks ago, right? You would still be moving, right? But we physically carry other people's burdens, other people's physical help. Maybe for some of us, it's raking leaves. I know for some people, they say, you know what? From the years of XYZ, my back is terrible, right? And this motion for some people is torture. But for some of us, it's like, that's, all right, I can do that all day, right? We can rake some leaves. Or if we're really lazy, we get the blower out. Right now. Right? Raking leaves. Cooking a meal. Cleaning. Working on a car. Right? 14 years working in a Ford dealership, I have a little bit of automotive knowledge. So when somebody is like, hey, I got a power steering pump that went out in my truck, will you help me do it? Absolutely. We carry each other's burden, right? For some of us, we're like, a power steering pump isn't a burden. But we help each other in their time of need. Maybe for some of us, it's working on homes. Maybe it's working on a roof or an exterior, maybe plumbing or electrical. For some of us, maybe a burden that Paul is referring to here is maybe that of a financial burden. I know we don't like to talk about finances. We don't like to talk about money, okay? But some people sometimes need help. We don't want to be taken advantage of, but we simply sometimes need help. All of us, at some point in our lives, have needed help. Maybe that was 20 years ago. Maybe that's today. Some people need help with their finances. We have a benevolence fund for that purpose, that when people get into hardship, right, they can depend on the church to help them out. Okay? But here is the next step. Here is the next step in that for some of us. Okay? If you're aware of somebody that needs money or goods, okay, maybe it's just a bag of groceries, right? If you're aware of some need that somebody has and you're able to help them out, we're called to help out. We're called to help carry that burden for that person. What about the burden of caring for someone? I know my grandmother, when she was in her early 90s, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And in that slow degrade of her life, my mom had the opportunity to move in with her. And I'm grateful for my mom. She's got a heart to serve. But when we see that in other people's lives, are we willing to carry that burden with them? Sometimes it's a couple with a small child or 2 or 3. And if you've raised kids like many of us have, we know the burden of taking care of kids all day long. And sometimes somebody needs to step in and watch the little 3-year-old burden. That's a little sarcastic there, but if you dealt with a 3-year-old, you understand what I'm saying. But those parents say, I need a break sometimes, and some of us can relieve that burden from them. Maybe you have an emotional or spiritual burden for people who are grieving, for people who have suffered loss, for people who are depressed, sad, dealing with anxiety or worry. People experience different things in different ways. And we as a community, we can help those people. We can lift those burdens away from them. How can we do that? How can we do that to somebody that has emotional or spiritual burdens? We can help them by expressing care and simply listening to them. We can show that by praying for them, by praying with them. This is not an exhaustive list, family. I'm just touching on some things, but they are examples of ways that we can gather as a body, as a community, to help others walk through things, challenges and hardships in their lives. But the key thing in these areas, the key thing that I believe Paul was pointing us to, was that we need to be aware of the people around us. We need to be looking for opportunities to serve one another. We need to have our ears and our eyes open to the signs of a need that we can meet as a family. So along these lines, another point that we'll look at this morning of building a Christ-centered community, number 2, is we build community by using our gifts and abilities to serve others. We use our gifts and abilities to serve others. Peter tells us, right, in our study in 1 Peter here just through the past 18 weeks, right, we talked about this. He says there in 1 Peter 4, 8 through 10, he says, above all, love each other deeply because love covers a multitude of sins. Each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in various forms. The point here that Peter is making is a simple one, that we should serve one another according to our abilities and our gifts. We shouldn't try to be someone we're not, okay? I need to caveat that. We ought not be someone we're not. If you don't know anything about roofing, and if somebody has a leaky roof, you should not be the one to get up on the roof and fix it, okay? but also we shouldn't just sit around and say, man, I can't roof. I don't know how to paint. I don't know how to spackle a wall. I don't know how to plumb. I don't know how to work on a car. I don't know how to, whatever, fill in the list for you. God has given each of us a talent, a gift, abilities, and we ought to use those to strengthen the community of our Christ-centered community. God has given us, each of us, the means to be of service to someone else. And this is where in everybody's minds they're saying, well, but Pastor Lance, you know, everybody's got an excuse. I come up with some good ones sometimes too, but anyway. Right? God is calling us to serve others. We need to use our gifts and abilities that He has given us. Deuteronomy 15, 7 and 8, and then 10 and 11 says this: if there is a poor man among you, your brothers, in any of the towns of the land that the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward the poor brother. Rather, be open-handed and freely lend him whatever he needs. Give generously to him and do so without a grudging heart. Then, because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed towards your brothers and towards the poor and the needy in your land. There are plenty of needy individuals in our community. And I am grateful and excited for the opportunity to serve them this afternoon. So here are some ways to be an effective community. Serve when needed, not when it's convenient. Okay? Be willing to adjust your schedule and alter your plans when others need your help. Look for opportunities to serve. You don't always have to wait to be asked. Offer your help to others. Don't be self-absorbed. Look and see the needs around you. Talk to people. Listen to them. Hear their needs. Even in a situation, they may not say it. But sometimes we need to read between the lines, don't we? And this all comes from having the right attitude. The right attitude. Not grumbling, not complaining, but an attitude of joy and thanks at the privilege of serving God by serving others. You see, this afternoon when we go out and to do our different community service projects, right? We're going to go serve some individuals. We're going to go help some people out. But brothers and sisters, at the end of the day, we have to say, thank God for that opportunity to serve you. That leads us back to the right attitude. Two are better than one. You ever heard that before? Two are better than one because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. It's Ecclesiastes 4. We need one another. It's simple as that. It's simple as that we need one another. We need one another for encouragement when we stumble. We need one another to help us up when we fall down. We need one another for protection when the enemy attacks. Not if, when the enemy attacks. We need one another for support when we're under stress. We need each other. And lastly, this morning, on building a Christ-centered community, point number 3 is we build community by following the example of Jesus Christ. 1 Peter 2:24 says that he himself bore our sin in his body on the cross so that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. For by his wounds we are healed. And in Mark 10:45, Jesus says this, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and give his life as a ransom for many." You see, Christ bore a burden that was not his own. Christ is our ultimate examples. He bore the guilt of our sin. He took our death for our wrong on the cross, so that those who place their faith in him should have everlasting life, that will receive forgiveness. You see, for Jesus, it wasn't convenient. For Jesus, it wasn't comfortable. For Jesus, it wasn't anything that we can pay him back for. It was an act of undeserved grace given because of his love for us. He held nothing back by sacrificing himself on that cross. If we are to be a church that God desires us to be, we must be a serving church. And it takes all of us. It takes all of us. All of us working together to serve others, to carry other people's burdens, to walk alongside each other in this life. We're going to fail. We're going to have hardship. We're going to have things that come up that we can call on each other to help out in those areas. When we work together, we serve areas, we worship God, and we show the love of God to those in need. For some of you, you're going to have the opportunity to go into the stores, and you're going to hand out a slip that says, here are some things that Love Inc. Care Closet are in need of. And you're going to share with the customers coming into those stores. It says, Love Inc. is in need of these things. Would you purchase something for them? You see, those individuals that you're serving right there, you'll never know their name. You'll never see their face. You'll never experience their burden or their need. But because of your service, when there is a need, and they call, and they say, hey, Pastor, things are tight and my kid needs a new set of sheets for his bed and some diapers, some wipes. I'm like, great. And I call and I say, go over to Love Inc. They've got a whole room full of stuff. Go over there and get what you need. You see, that's the way that Christian partnership works. Right? We don't have a room here that's full of diapers and clothes and toiletry items and soap and shampoo. Right? I don't have all that stuff. But we support a ministry that does. And when there's a need of that type, I know where to send them. Or, even a matter of fact, I'll be like, where do you live? What size is your bed? I'll go over and pick that stuff up and I'll bring it to you. Right? It's having open ears and open eyes to see, to read between the lines, to serve God in a community that is so focused on itself sometimes, right? I'm talking about the community of where we live. But I am grateful for a community right here of faithful believers that take their time and to serve others when they're in needs, when we bear one another's burdens, when we serve one another. When we are focused not on ourselves, but in ways that we can help others, that is when we are imitating the love of Christ in our lives. That's when we, as Christ's example, leads us to do those things. When we do that, that's when we're building His body. And when we are being a Christ-centered community of His believers. You see, I feel like I could just keep going. I could keep going because Christ's example in our lives, I can't stop talking about that. What He has shown us in His 33 years here on the earth, 3 years of ministry, we see what He has done. And we ought not to stop talking about what Jesus has done. Because at the end of the day, though it's really important that we build a community. We do these three things, right? That's really important. That's my thrust of this morning. But at the end of the day, if there is somebody that doesn't know Christ, if there's somebody that we engage with when we're out fixing a fence or trimming trees or doing whatever, if we miss an opportunity to share the love of Christ with them, not only through our actions, but also through our words, I think we're missing something. So this morning, I want to encourage you guys. By the leading of the Holy Spirit, I ask that you pray as a group before you start whatever you're doing. Say, Lord, give us an opportunity to show your love to others? And will I have the opportunity to share the love with my words to others of what you've done for me? See, here's the awesome thing. We don't all have to be Bible scholars. All you have to simply do is share your story. Share your testimony of what Christ has done for you. Nobody's going to critique you in that. Why? Because that's your story. But we have an opportunity to show our community what it means to be a Christ-centered community. Will you pray with me?